All right, welcome into a new episode of the Glue Guys. I'm Landon Lucas. That's my dad, Richard Lucas, and we're excited to be back. We're back on track now, you could say.
Right?
We went through that episode. We knew it was coming. We knew that there was going to be that stretch of a few
Yeah.
games or a moment in the season where it's like, what are we going to do? And then we had that episode. We got it out the way, and it
Right.
seems like Kansas is right back on track now.
So the players had their players only meeting, right? I mean,
Probably, I'm assuming
you
so.
pencil that in, right? Late January, early February, players only meeting because of a bad stretch. And then they figure things out and they get back on track. And, I mean, is this the time to rub in the fact that I called the fact that they were going to go into Rupp Arena and get a W,
Yes.
or is that later in the show? I can't remember.
No, we can go ahead and start off with that. I mean,
Oh, okay.
that was a good call by you, and I, the reason for why I thought Kentucky could win that game was inside and Oscar
Right.
and the struggles that Kansas has been having on the offensive or on the defensive glass against guys going and getting those offensive rebounds in just the biggest moments of the game. And they go out there and they hold him to 2 offensive rebounds. I don't even think they came until the second half. And as a team, 4 total, and the other 2 were just team offensive rebounds. They go out of bounds, and it's just like, oh yeah, just write that down as offensive rebound. I mean, that was pretty impressive to me. And so, yeah, if you were to tell me before the game that Oscar was going to just kind of not have that same kind of impact, I would have picked Kansas. So I just want to say, I'll say that right now. But no, they did a great job game planning wise. They did a great job. Coach Self went in there, had that team executing exactly everything he wanted to on the defensive end. I thought they played hard. And even though they got off to another slow start, they immediately turned it around. Instead of letting that go past the first TV timeout into the second and then being like, we're down 15, they went down early into that first TV timeout and then came back out and turned it around.
Right. And it really even, honestly, even those first few possessions, it was like, Kentucky scores, Kansas goes down and misses, Kentucky scores, it's 4-0. And then you start thinking, geez, is this it? I mean, is this that slow start you're talking about? And all of a sudden, Jalen says, "Nah, no, not on my watch." And he starts doing his thing. So, I mean, I think what I liked the most about it was just the overall. It felt like the composure was there. And remember when we were talking about other teams, and I think it was probably TCU, where TCU, we just could tell TCU didn't care where they were at. Like, this could have been at a schoolyard or whatever, and they were just going to take it at Kansas. And, it felt like Kansas was ready for the moment. They were prepared. And it didn't feel like they were letting the pressure of not being that, being that team that lost 4 in a row. You know what I mean? Like it just felt like they were just going, okay, we got this. So there was a confidence out there that was really, really pleasant to see.
Yeah. Well, I'll correct you. It was 3 in a row. 4 would have been a record. And they only got lost 3 in a row. And, that was one of those things.
Kentucky,
oh, I know.
That would have been 4 in a row is what I'm saying. So there's a lot of pressure that's
sure.
there. And, on top of the fact that it was Kentucky, nationally televised, all of those things,
Yeah.
So that's what I meant by that.
No, and you're completely right. I mean, they went out there with that composure from the jump. And I mean, I wonder how much having that little bit of a break in between that Monday, it was a Monday loss.
It was a Monday game, right?
Monday game all the way to Saturday. That may be enough time where you can kind of reset, get back to it. And you got to remember you're resetting to guys who are leading this team who just won a national championship. They played in those big games. They've been in those situations. They know what it's like to be in big time matchups of blue bloods and whatnot. And it almost looked like Kentucky, for the most part, it felt like they weren't in that same boat. Maybe the pressure was getting a little bit to them. Offensively, they weren't executing necessarily well. And you can kind of tell that maybe the pressure actually got to them and not to Kansas, which was great. And that's what you want to see, especially coming off that loss. I want to credit the players, but also the coaches, because those coaches all week were getting them prepared with the
Right.
scouting, with just mentally. You got so much to deal with between, I'm sure, players meetings and meeting individually with coaches and players, going up to their offices and talking with them. All that stuff probably happened in that week, and then to come
Right.
out and be ready to play and handle business. That's what you want to see. That's what you're looking for as far as a bounce back. And you could almost say that Kentucky game may have been placed there and needed, because you're looking at this league schedule. It's hard to come back and right the ship against a lot of these teams.
Right.
Kentucky might have been the perfect matchup, to
Because
go.
it still has the cachet, the marquee name, even though they're not as
Exactly.
good as some of the other teams, but it felt like it was a big time game. And on top of it, it didn't really impact you in the Big 12 at all. So, I mean, it is probably like you said, the perfect
Yes.
placement of a game.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that could have happened. There is just, you have a nationally televised, hyped up game against Kentucky Blue Bloods and stuff, and you're going out against a team that really is a lesser team than at least the way they're playing right now. They have a lot of
Right.
talent, but just the way they're playing together and stuff. They were on a little bit of a win streak, but overall this season, they just haven't been quite at the level as most of these top tier Big 12 teams, especially during this stretch of, 6, 7, 8 games that we have in league play. I mean, that could have been perfectly placed. It got them back on track, and then allowed, kind of a little reset to come back home and then, play against Kansas State.
So let's talk a little bit about the Kentucky game and the fact that the biggest worry going into it in my mind was, and I think similar to what you've been thinking as well, but how do they handle the big fella inside, right? Is he leading the nation in
Yes, and rebounding.
rebound, right?
Again, he did last year. He is again this year.
Right. So how do you handle that? And then what's going to happen with DeJuan Harris? Like, to me, his play has been so poor over this losing streak that it's been almost like an anchor. Like, I mean, I literally was starting to wonder if he was the right person to even be on the court at because of the fact that when your point guard is struggling, it impacts so many other pieces of the game, right? Because he's the one who has the ball in his hand most of the time. He's the one who's distributing the ball. He's the one that if his shot's not going, then it's so much easier for you defensively to play off and to play him, because he's not going to hurt you anyway. So I was really concerned about that. And it was like, it felt like both of them were just answered because of the fact that, Big Oscar was not himself, and it was weird. It was weird because sometimes, especially early on, and some of the ones that I saw, it wasn't like he was trying as hard as he normally did. I mean, it was weird. I don't know if it was the double teams that was coming at him, but he has to have been having double teams.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised as well. And then on top of it, you had kind of just a lack of just emphasis towards getting him the ball, especially as the game went on. Towards the end of the game, there were many plays where he had position, he had a duck in or something. It's like they see him, but it's like whatever. They weren't treating him like the national player of the year that he was last year. And I know if that's Coach Self, he's yanking that guy out of the game who just missed him, wide open under the hoop. But it could have been a little bit due to the ball pressure. It could have been the double teams. I mean, there's a lot of things that could go into it. But to get back to your point about DeJuan, I thought this Kentucky game was huge for DeJuan and for Kevin, because those two guys, the way that they play, they're able to impact the game in ways outside of just scoring. And I think they both were in a scoring slump, but they were also just in a slump overall, as far as just, you got DeJuan Harris, committing unnecessary turnovers in big parts of the game, Kevin doing some uncharacteristic stuff as well. If you look at the Kentucky game, it seemed like they got back to, okay, even if we aren't scoring, we can impact the game in many ways. You even saw Kevin gets hurt in the second half and goes out for a couple plays for an ankle injury, and he's out for a stretch. And it got immediately exposed on the defensive end just because the guards that were in spot for him weren't in the correct positions, weren't, that has nothing to do with making baskets. That's just a guy who knows how to be in the right positions. He comes right back in, immediately gets a couple steals, I think, a little help side dig. Those small things are ways that he can impact the game. And same with Dajuan Harris. And then what I love to see was at the end of the game, after not a great shooting night again for Kevin, he was playing well, but shooting wasn't great. He hits a big shot there at the end. He hits a big one. Jalen hits a big one. Dajuan, I think, hit one. Great. Everybody, it seemed like everybody stepped up and hit that big shot. And that's what you want, especially coming out of that losing streak. A lot of questions, everybody involved making big plays there at the end of the game. It has to be good for the team's confidence and, everybody's individual confidence as well.
No question about it. One other area of improvement and of concern, especially after TCU and Baylor, was transition defense.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that it just felt like those teams just were able to turn turnovers and missed shots into just buckets on the other end. And so with Kansas limiting their turnovers, which only 10 for the game, you have to be happy with that. And actually making some shots really helps that, because then teams can't get that ball and start running down their throats. But I got a question for you.
Yeah.
So I recall, and it was so ironic. Here's an irony here. On Saturday, when this game was happening, I had a photo memory pop up of the Saturday that you guys went into Rupp Arena and played them, because a picture was taken with my phone. I took a picture of the score, the final score and everything, and of you guys beating them. So I just remember how, it was, you remember game day was there, and I remember watching it, and they were talking about how, what's his name?
Bam Adebayo.
Bam. Was going to, is he going to score 30 or 40?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
He was on a streak. He was on some historic SEC streak where he had 30 in a row, or 30 points 3 times in a row or something crazy like that.
It was something crazy like that. And then it was you, and then Carlton was hurt, right? I think he wasn't, or he didn't
There was some off the court stuff, I think. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, it was just so crazy about that. So then you guys go in and handle business. Unbelievable game.
Mm-hmm.
What is Coach Self like in a situation like that? Because there's big games, but then there's playing Kentucky and Calipari. That, I feel like that's different. But is it not, or does he treat it 100% equal?
I would say there's nothing glaring that he does, but you can just feel it. And I don't know if it's coming from him. I don't know if it's coming from just the hype of, every time you just have the TV on in the background. I'll just be in my, dorm room, and every commercial break, it's oh, Kansas, Kentucky, you just know it's a big matchup. But yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of emphasis from him, about pride, as we talked about before, going into that game. That was going to be a big talk, was, hey, this is about pride. This is about more than just, obviously there's no league record that's on the table or anything like that. It's just about going and the pride of it. But for me, I would say that game was really, obviously it was a little different because it was a top 5 matchup, and they had a really good team that year. And so going into it, I think we just lost to West Virginia. So we were in a similar spot as far as coming off of a loss, needing to kind of right the ship a little bit. It wasn't a 3-game losing streak, but for us, going to losing at West Virginia, we knew we had to turn something around. I think that broke our 16 or 17 game win streak up until then. And so same thing, we went in there with a little bit of okay, we got to just grind this back, and get back on track. And, that environment's one of those ones where it's exciting and you can feel like it's a big game and stuff, but it's not necessarily like the loudest place or anything. It can get
Right.
loud at times, but it's not like, Hilton or I'm sure going to Kansas State when especially this last matchup they had, I could hear how loud it was on TV. I mean, there's some really loud places. So you just kind of go in there. It's a fun game. It's more than anything, like it's a break from league play. League play is just such a grind. You have this fun game that you go to. I think Coach Self kind of treats it that way as well. It's just like, hey, let's go have fun. Let's make this, a good trip. And I remember, just how fun that locker room was before the game, after the game. That flight home was fun. I mean, we were just having a good time going into Kentucky and getting the win. I'm sure that this team, like that was, as we said before, how well this game was placed for them to go in there and handle business the way they did, where like really, I mean, they got off to the slow start, but they take the lead and they stayed, they really held the lead for most of the game. That's the kind of win that like brings you together. You're on that flight home, like, okay, we're back now. We're good.
Right.
So I'm sure it was good. I know Coach Self was super happy about it. I was in Kansas in between those games, and I could just feel that everybody was like, okay, I was talking to Coach Roberts, and he was saying that like the week before, the coaches' offices and stuff were just dead quiet. Yeah,
right.
he was like nobody was really saying, like, you would go and talk about what you had to talk about, but it was no like, hey, what are you doing for lunch? Hey, this and that. And then he goes, you hear how it is now, and like people were laughing and joking. And stuff.
Music's playing.
Exactly. That's the difference between that losing streak and then, hey, we just beat Kentucky and now we're back home to face a Kansas State team, which Allen Fieldhouse is not going to let you lose that very often. Like that was the kind of vibe and confidence. And so I think that game was just perfect in so many ways. I thought the coaches and everybody handled it well. The players did as well. And that was much needed, I would say.
So then you start thinking about, you get the big win. You start heading home, and you're going against a team that just, not too long ago, because that other game was just 2 weeks ago, something like that, for when they were in Manhattan for Kansas State. And so you were there for that, so you were there between those games, like you said.
Yep.
What was the vibe like going into the Kansas State game? I mean, was there that confidence had you felt like had been returned, or do you still feel like, hey, this could put us in a real hurt if we drop this Big 12 game?
That's a good question. It was two different ways. One, I would say coaches' confidence was back. I could feel it just being around. They had Sunday off, which was nice to have an off day that you usually, if you go and you lose that game at Kentucky, you're watching film and practice that whole next day. And so I know everybody was happy. They got an off day, got to watch some football, watch the Chiefs make it, to the Super Bowl, all that stuff. So it was like, that was nice to have that off day and being around the coaches, in the office and stuff. I felt like, okay, just like Coach Robert said, they had that confidence back. They were like, all right, we got this. We're going to attack this team. We're back on track. It wasn't that quiet, like, this is some rough stretch of the season anymore. They were ready to go. Now, what I noticed in practice, though, there was some confidence, but it was still, as you said, like, it wasn't back to that, okay, we're all the way back, because I think that there was a little bit of, okay, we took a break from league play. We went and played a team that, it's a talented team, but they're not the best as a team. Like if they were in the Big 12, they'd be dropping quite a few games, I would assume. And then you're coming back to the league where really the 3-game losing streak was in the Big 12. It's not like there was non-conference games and stuff. It was in the Big 12. So that Kentucky game, you removed that. In the Big 12, you're still on a 3-game losing streak, and you got a team coming in that it's a veteran team, a well-coached team, a team that's going to be a little different than the Kentucky team you just played, which had some guys who were making mistakes. I don't think that this Kansas State team makes very often. And so you kind of felt that a little bit in practice. I wouldn't say it was like nerves at all, but it was just the confidence isn't all the way back yet. And then I would say the shoot around the following day. So now it's Tuesday, day of the game. They had the music out. It was a little bit more like, okay, we're ready to play. I think
Right.
the confidence to go out there and play and, knowing that Allen Fieldhouse was going to be crazy that night, that's when I started seeing like, okay, they're going to handle business tonight. But it takes a lot, and that win was important. They go out there and obviously they don't win that game. That Kentucky confidence that you got is right out the door. You're right back to where you started as far as confidence level. So yeah, it was a mix between the two, but I saw the players get more and more confident as the game got closer.
So now you and I hope that we're just not going to shut down the Glue Guys because you're now on a national speaking tour.
No.
But we turn on the channel and there you are doing the pregame. So tell us about that, because I mean, I know that was I mean, and you did fantastic, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm biased because I'm dad, but
yeah,
you did it. I just thought you did a fantastic job, and they alluded to listening to us on the Glue Guys.
Yeah.
We got a listener or two, I guess.
Hey, I'll tell you, we have more than a listener or two. While I was there, the amount of people that came up to me, I mean, I don't know where these listeners are coming from, if it's like maybe the Spotify or something that I'm not seeing, but the amount of people that came up to me and said, hey, loved listening to your podcast, blah, blah, blah. I had some people that came up, and I know they may not be regular listeners, but they said that Coach Self Pod, they were like, I thank you so much for doing that. That was so great to listen to, this and that. But yeah, we had quite a few people who came up and complimented. They said they're weekly listeners. So if you are listening again, thank you. Drop some comments. I don't know if you're listening on YouTube or on iTunes. I don't know. We're in a few different spots, but we do appreciate the support. And it was nice to hear that, because we don't know. We're just putting this show out and just hoping that, there's some people who tune in, but it was nice to hear them come up and say that. And as far as being on the show, the pregame and the postgame, that was fun. That was my first time doing it with the, producer in your ear and all that, having a look at the kids. So there was a few things that I think with some time and some practice, I would get more comfortable with, because that was all first time for me. And then on top of it, we're located like right through the doors when you first walk in. And so like, there's people that are like trying to get your attention and and so that was all new to me, but I had a great time. Obviously, talking basketball and talking Kansas basketball is super easy to do. So I could do that all day if I need to. But it was fun, not only to be there to do that, but then just to be around the team. I was able to, be around the bigs a little bit, help out with the bigs. I was able to Jay Billis was doing the game, so he was there the day before as well for both practices, and I got to talk with him a lot and just see what goes into being a color commentator. All the notes, he has pages and pages. He showed me all of his notes. It's ridiculous going into the game. I mean, that's why he's one of the best in the business. But it was just fun getting a chance to do all that. Be back in Lawrence for an extended period of time and without a 2-year-old kid with me. So, that was.
Wait, does that mean you went to the Hawk?
No, I didn't. No, I almost did the last night just because. So Travis Kelce was in town for the game,
right?
And he's a super nice guy. He came up and was talking to everybody, and was he's like, "All right, we're going out and stuff." And I'm like, "I got an early flight. My flight wasn't until 10, but that's my how far away from the party scene I am right now, unfortunately." But no, it was fun to be back out there and have a chance to reconnect with everybody and a little bit longer of a trip, and then got a chance to work with the bigs a little bit, specifically Ernest, and so that was nice as well to have some time with them without the kids with me.
So it's funny you talk about doing the show and having someone in your ear, and you and I are able to do this, so we're able to talk as much as we want because it's our broadcast, so we got to do whatever we want here. but when you have commercials and you have people that are the producers telling you to rap or whatever, looking at the camera and all those things, it means you have to get your thoughts kind of you have to be really succinct with what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
So that is a skill in itself. So again, I thought you did a great job with it. So
Thanks.
I
Yeah.
don't want you, I just don't want you to leave the glue guys, because
No, no, no. I won't be
you're
leaving. Not anytime
you're gonna
soon.
drop me like a bad habit, and it's just gonna be glue guy,
Glue
and I'm gonna be
guy.
like, yo.
No, no. Yeah, it was fun. I had a good time with it. It was something that I enjoy doing. I'll hopefully get better at it, do a little bit more of it. Hopefully we'll have more opportunities come up as well. But yeah, that's all stuff I'll work on and get better. I know, like, as they're asking you the question, you have to like think about the full answer in at that time, and like you can't just start talking and just hope that, like on here I'll start a sentence and not really 100% know where I'm going with it sometimes.
Wait, you're not supposed to tell anybody that.
And then halfway through I'm like, oh, I'll pull this, pull that. You can't do that because you got too much going on. You have to know what you're talking about and what you're going to be, as the questions come, and be like, all right, this is what I'm touching on. So
yeah, but you know what though? See, here's the nice part of it, and this is why those who do the color oftentimes, it's your history, you know what I mean? It's you've been around it enough, and you can always pull from things with Coach Self and stuff like that all the time, which is really helpful, because you have this bank of things that you've heard and stuff over years that you can just pull from and just throw out if you need to.
Yeah. Well, let's get into the Kansas State game a little bit and recap that. So they come back home, and as we talked about, there was a little bit of still like, okay, we have to finish this comeback, or fully right the ship on this, get completely back on track by beating Kansas State. And you want to talk about a big game. I mean, after the loss that just happened, I heard a lot of talk about I saw Coach, and even on the broadcast and a few things, they were talking about how that quick turnaround it's kind of a bummer that they don't spread it out more and whatnot. You play too quick back to back. My answer to that was, as a player coming off of a loss, that's the only, I would want to play them the following day if I could. So if you give me, a week and a half or whatever it was in between, that is the most ideal situation. And so I thought that you could kind of feel that from the players. It's like, okay, we get our chance to get them right back. They can't have bragging rights and all that for too long. We have to, snatch that back. I thought they did a good job in preparation, kind of getting the guys hyped and ready for that. And then that crowd, they were ready to go. They threw up the intro video. It got loud in there. And there were a few times, especially early on, where, it got really, really loud. And, Allen Fieldhouse has different levels. And you only see it get to like even the average level is like above most places in the country. You only see it get to that like top level, a few games a season. And this was definitely one of them, where there was a few moments in this game where you can't really hear even your own thoughts. If you're anywhere off the court, it's so loud in there. And this was one of those games. And, I thought that the key going into it was that start, that getting off to that fast start. We've talked about it so many times with the home and aways in conference, how different a team will feel on the road compared to at home. Well, you have to force that issue a little bit. You can't let them be TCU and come in and feel confidence from the jump, because they no longer will feel like inferior team at all. They're going to have that confidence and stuff. And so I thought it was really important that they come out and use that crowd early on and get off to a good start. And you saw them, do exactly that. Obviously making shots helps, but they were able to come out, get off to a good lead. And that was the first time in 4 games that they got off to a good start. And it was a perfect time to do it, because then you get the crowd in it, you strip their confidence, you let them know, hey, you don't belong here tonight. And that's very important for them to do. And I was looking to that as one of the keys, and that's exactly what they did.
Yeah, and the thing is too is that they're up by 12 at halftime, and part of me was like, the second half, are they gonna? Is it 0-0 like they typically teach you at when you're at halftime, or are they gonna think we're up by 12, we've got this cushion, before you know it, K-State starts cutting into it. But they were able to keep that margin pretty much throughout the second half, and they finished the game winning by 12. And they had several people, four, it looked like four, I think four, 3 or 4 people who were in double figures, but almost everybody in the team, had some real scoring in it. So, the thing about it too, if you start looking back, the reason why I thought this was so important is all of everything you talked about, in stopping that conference bleeding, playing against the in-state, I don't know if you call it rival, but in-state, school.
That's a rival.
We're okay, rival, but but then I think also, if you look at the games, even that they won right before the losing streak,
yeah,
they
still
barely
had to,
won those.
and they were down. Like you look at the Oklahoma State game, they had to crawl out of the hole. Even Oklahoma, they got down a little late. They had to come back and put stops together. Yeah, it wasn't like they were handling.
Iowa State, I think it was too. I mean, it was
Iowa State, yeah.
Right, so these games were all like these, like you said, they were down, and they, and then they had to fight to come back, and they would win some of those, and then they lost those ones in a row, and they beat Kentucky by whatever it was, 7 or 6 or 7, and then so it just felt like it was time. It was time to have a good old fashioned one where everybody plays, and the crowd doesn't have to feel like we're having a heart attack because Kansas is controlling the game most of the time.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it was. I mean, I don't think there were many moments that I can recall back to where I felt like, okay, we might be in trouble here. I think there was one time in the second half where they cut it down a little bit, but it was never like threatening to the point where you thought, okay, with Allen Fieldhouse and with the way this game is going, this is going to be a loss. And you feel that as a player. I remember times, as a player, you just go into it, and halfway through the game, you're like, we're not they go on a run. Oh, well, we're not losing this. You have that sense of confidence. And if I'm feeling that as a fan, I know those guys were feeling that as a player. And so I thought that was huge for them. Obviously, as I said, making shots helps. And in that first half, they were, really throughout the game, but especially that first half, they were making shots. They were sharing the ball better than I've seen for a while, as far as just getting the ball moving, getting the extra passes, finding those open shots. Even the ones that they missed, it was like shots that you just expected to go in. The shots, it's not one where it's a fall away and you're like, oh, okay. Like, if he would have made that, great. No, it was shots that the whole crowd was waiting to cheer for. And that's what you want. You want to have that happen. They were forcing turnovers. I believe they forced 10 turnovers in the first half. That kind of stuff is impressive. Now, what impressed me the most, especially in that first half, because they had to battle with it early on, was the bench and the play of the bench. And that was necessary and needed. And coming into this game, I believe we were like 300 and something in the country in bench minutes. And I was talking with Coach Stuff, and it came up. I think Jay had brought up that stat, and we were all chatting about it. And he was like, I'm surprised that there's teams that play the bench less than us, because that's just kind of how it felt up until that game. There just wasn't that real production as far as getting like a good solid chunk of minutes from multiple bench guys. And they were really cutting it down to like a 6-7 man rotation with those 6 and 7, not really playing a ton. Well, this game, it was needed because the refs decided they wanted to yet again take control of this rivalry game and just blow the whistle every time they could. And there was foul trouble early on with KJ. Some of the guards got into foul trouble. And those bigs and guards that came off the bench, they played great. I thought that they impacted the game in the ways that you should as a bench player. You come off the bench, you play hard, you just do the little things, you're in the right spots that you need to be, you bring energy. I was super, happy to see that, because that's something that it's been lacking. And in a game that is this important, if they don't come ready to play and they get into the game and, they're making small mistakes, which during scout team and walkthrough, I was a little worried because some of those bench guys were a little like unsure of exactly where they need to be. And it's the day of the game. And I didn't see any of that, because they were doing a switch switch all but one type stuff. So there was a lot of communication and stuff that needed to go into the defensive style that they wanted to play that night. And those guys were locked in, engaged, and they gave great minutes. And that was, I think, a huge key to Kansas being able to keep the momentum going, not fall off at all. The tone that was set early on the game was continued by those bench guys. And, if they don't do that, I don't think this game is won as easily as it was the other day.
Well, it sounds like Allen Fieldhouse was hopping. I've said it many times. Best place in the country to watch a college basketball game. So I definitely would love to catch one in the future.
Yeah.
Speaking of future,
yeah,
they have some games coming up here.
Yeah.
So looking at the schedule, we're seeing they're at 15-6 Iowa State, which that place is always rocking.
Hilton,
and then they come home for 19 or 18-4 Texas.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on those games?
The Iowa State game is going to be interesting, and I think one of the main reasons is because I don't know if you saw their last game, but they were playing the worst team in the conference, Texas Tech. Texas Tech has not won a game. They were up, I believe, almost 20 points. I think it was 20 points, and they lost the game. And so, we talk about motivation and stuff coming off of the losing streak and all this stuff. There's also motivation and you don't have a light practice or a light film or anything light the following days after allowing a 20-point comeback in a tough league race against the worst team in the league. I mean, that can't happen. And so I can only assume that this week leading into this massive game, and this is, the biggest game in Hilton, having Kansas come to town. And I can only imagine what those practices are going to be like, what those meetings are going to be like. And you're going to see a team that's going to come out and fight. It may not have the talent to win, but I thought they showed enough in Lawrence that they can definitely compete. And if Kansas doesn't come to play, they will win the game. And so I think that's going to be a tough one. Obviously, I just have such a bias towards, or not bias, but just I put Allen Fieldhouse giving so many points that it's hard to see us losing, even though we just got smacked by TCU at home. But that was just one of those games that's just, okay, that was a weird game. But that usually doesn't happen. So with the Texas game, I feel a little bit more comfortable that they'll, have Allen Fieldhouse, they'll be ready to go and all that. That Iowa State game, that's going to be a grind, and they're going to have to go out there. You've been there before. It gets loud in there. And if they get on any type of early runs and stuff, especially, I could see a lot of these guys starting to feel that pressure. And you don't want any doubt to creep up because, I know Kentucky gave a lot of confidence. Kansas State gives even more confidence. The last thing you want is the thought of, okay, are we back to where we were? Did we get lucky with the good matchup against Kentucky? And then obviously Allen Fieldhouse not letting you lose to Kansas State and making a lot of shots, which all of a sudden, if those shots don't fall in this next game, you go back into a shooting slump. Now you're on the road against a hungry team. There's a lot of questions going into it. So I am going to pick them to win both of these games this week. But I think that the Hilton one is really going to be a grind. And if they're not making shots, they're going to have to go there and make sure that they're playing defense and not letting them go on any type of runs more than just a few buckets or minutes at a time.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see really in both of these games. I'd like to see continued, great play from Dajuan. He's gotten really. It's like previous 3 games, bad.
Yeah.
Last 2 games, really, really dang good.
Career high.
Right, and then also McCullough as well. Mm-hmm. Those guys stay hot. And guess who we have not mentioned? I don't know if we've even said his name at all.
Grady,
right? And so if you think about it too, is the fact that that's a piece that still has been a little bit more up and down than he was pretty consistent early on. It's been a little up and down, which freshmen tend to do.
It's hard. I mean, to be honest, what Jalen's doing is what Frank Mason did, and that's just one of those like night in, night out. even though it's Big 12, you expect him to go out and score 20 and play well. That's hard to do. So like nobody, it's hard for most guys to do that, even juniors and seniors, let alone a freshman. So like that's expected to go through some ups and downs. He's still Grady and still impacts the game, and we'll have those games as well.
Right. So that's what I'm saying, though, is that I think the reason those losses were happening, and I'm going to put it on to one or two players, of course, but when you start firing at all cylinders, now you've got a Kansas team that's really hard to beat. Because everybody's rebounding, everybody's locked in defensively, everybody's making shots, and all of a sudden, instead of it just being Jalen with 22 and then everybody else, right now you're seeing others scoring into the teens, and Grady hitting his shots and things like that. So I like them over the next two games as well. Our 6-game when we did it, our 6-game prediction, we both said 4-2.
I think you said 4-2. There's a chance that I said 5-1. I'm not. I will have to check the tape.
I don't think you did.
You don't think I did? Maybe
you did, which
I'm
means that you already mathematically are out.
I'm out of it already. Your prediction. So I'm so out of it because my one loss was the Kentucky game, which they smooth sailing the whole time. But I mean that just took me by surprise with Oscar more than anything. But yeah, no, you still have a chance to hit your projection of 4-2.
There you go. And I think they do it. I think that it's going to be a really close one. I'm actually going to predict an overtime. I think there's going to be an overtime
in Hilton, or
yes, in Hilton.
Oh wow!
And then I think what you'll see at Texas will be somewhat similar to the Kansas State. It's not going to be quite that big of a blowout, but I do think it'll be one where, for the most part, you're going to feel like they've handled business throughout. But I do think Kansas takes care of business over the next couple of games.
Yeah. Well, they're going to have to stay focused, not look ahead at all, which I don't think they will. But there's a small chance that you go Iowa State. They just lost to the worst team. We got a big game against Texas on Big Monday coming up. I don't think that's going to be the case. But you would hope that there's not like a little bit of a sandwich effect between Kansas State and Texas with this Iowa State game, because and I know that in the Big 12, especially against a team like that, especially in a place like that, you can't go into it with any type of lack of urgency or focus or anything like that. So they're going to have to go in there, attack them early on, hopefully get off to a good start, and let them know, hey, we're still Kansas. They got some confidence in Allen Fieldhouse, thinking they could play with them. They have to go in there and take that away. Like the game that you went to, where we, handled business start to finish and got on out there. So,
but that's the most fun for sure.
Yes, yeah. So, I think we can wrap it up now, and we'll be back next week.
We're gonna have guests again, or is it just us?
Yeah. I know. I'm so bad that like today I'm thinking like, okay, like it's a good day. Let's go ahead and record the show. And I'm like, oh, there's no guest, and by then it's like, all right, what am I going to do? Message somebody and be like, hey, in an hour and a half, would you want to jump on the show?
You start now, okay? Like you start now for next week. Remember, we haven't done it from the stands. We haven't done that in front.
Oh my god.
We don't have any. How are we going to get any sponsors if we can't even get any guests or any segments?
I know. I'm busy, man. I got kids and stuff. But hey, people are at least enjoying it. They're saying they watch it. I mean, it's countless. The amount of times that people came, you would be shocked. We got to get you out to Kansas so you can meet some of these people. You're going to be a celebrity, Man,
they're not there to see the old man.
They'll be like, oh, Richard, you're the glue guy.
The glue guy. What are the glue guys? Yeah, no, I don't think so. It'll be like, oh, excuse me, sir, move out of the way. Lando.
No, they know who you are. But yeah, we'll be back next week. We'll recap these next two games. I will think about a guess. I just gotta reach out to somebody right now. It was nice to call him. You know who I would want to get on actually, and we'll see. He's been playing more, and I'll have more opportunities. Is Ernest, because I had that chance to really get to know him a little bit better and talk to him after practice and give some tips and tricks for defense and offense positioning. And that was, somebody I would like to just learn more about, talk to, what his mindset's like, because he's in a position where, as we've said before, he's one injury or a couple fouls away from having to make a massive impact on a top 5, top 10 team as a true freshman. And, he has a lot of good tools, a lot of things I think he still needs to work on, but he knows that. And it seemed like he was very receptive of that as well. So I could reach out to him or somebody else and we'll get a player on.
How about Jalen? I mean, can you not? I mean,
no, we can do Jalen too. I just have to reach out. I'll reach. Just why don't
you start now? Like this is how you do this. You get ahead of things a little bit.
All right. I'm a procrastinate. I procrastinate too much, unfortunately. But
as soon as we're done, be like, okay.
As soon as we're done, I close the computer. I go, and my mind is already on to the next thing. What I have to do with the little ones, or getting some food or something. I don't know.
Hey, you want to play with the big dogs? This is the things you gotta do, man. Come on.
I know. Anyways, we'll be back next week. Leave some comments and let us know what you like to hear, who you would like to see, your thoughts. If you came up and said hi in Kansas, to leave a comment about it or something.
Right. And if you want to see Dad out in Kansas,
if you want to see us get old Pops out to Kansas, go ahead and leave a comment, and we'll make it happen. So I will. We'll be back next week, and hopefully we're back with 2 more wins and your predictions correct.
My predictions are usually pretty good.
All right. We'll see about it. All right. See you guys.